Hey YouTubers, today I'm working on my car again. The injectors aren't working properly, and the reason I know it's not working properly is because I'm getting a code saying mixture rich or mixture uneven or something like that, but on two specific cylinders, on cylinder 4 and cylinder number 6. This is after I took the entire intake off to replace a tube that goes from the thermostat housing all the way to the back to the heater core. I'm guessing a couple pieces of dust or crud or something got into those injectors and they're not performing optimally. Alright, now as you're watching me right now, I've already done the procedure. What I did was I took the injectors out. I didn't have replacement injectors, but I backflowed them. I have another video showing backflowing the injector to get dirt out of the system. So I'm not going to show that part, but what I am going to show in this video is how to get injectors out if they're stuck in the head of the engine, if they're stuck in the cylinder head, because I've seen a few people complain that it's kind of hard to get those injectors out, and I've seen that there's a special tool that looks like a fork with a slide hammer on the end of it, and you can do that. The piece that I made was with a flat piece of metal. I just bent it at an angle and then cut out a wedge in it to fit into the neck of the injector, and then just pry it out, and it works really well. Takes very little effort, and the cost of the piece of flat metal I think was like 10 bucks. So anyway, as usual, if you like the videos I make, click like so I know to make more of the same. If you want to see more when I make them, hit subscribe. Let's get into it. This is the Audi 3.2 V6, and on one side this is the lower intake, this is the bracket that holds the fuel rail in place, and of course the pipe that goes into the fuel rail, and that's all been removed from this side. So there are 5 T30 Torx that have to be removed, 2 10mm bolts, and then a small T20 Torx, and then you remove the bracket first, and then the lower intake comes out second. Oh wait, no, the bracket comes out first, and then the fuel rail, it just pries out. Once you get this bracket off, there's nothing else holding the fuel rail in place. You just wiggle it and pry it, it'll come out. Sometimes it'll come out clean, and then sometimes the O-rings on the injector will actually pop off of the top of the injector and stay into the fuel rail. If that's the case, you just pull them out with a pick, stick them back on the injector when you're putting it back, and then just put a little dab of grease on the mouth. On this part of the fuel rail, you just put a little dab of grease around here so it'll slide down and it won't damage the O-rings as it's going back in place, and then you just kind of wiggle and push and it'll slide down and pop in there. Alright, now next part of the process is removing the injectors. I have to remove number 6 injector, which is this one in the back here on the driver's side, on the left side. And the process is that you have to remove first the plug, the electrical connector, and then the next part. So there are 2 parts to the retainer that's holding it in, but this whole retainer doesn't actually hold it in. Once you get it out, you'll see that it's just sitting here. So first part is, you'll see, so you see this upper piece, that's this thick piece of aluminum, and then there's this lower piece that's small, that's stainless steel, and you want to pry this tiny little tab out on both sides so that you can lift this piece of aluminum out. And then once you get this piece of aluminum out, I'm going to show you how I remove the injector, because the injector has to come out before the stainless steel piece on the bottom comes out, because the stainless steel piece is seated down in the hole where the injector goes, and it's never going to come out before the injector. The injector has to come out first. So let me get this piece out first by prying these little tabs on both sides. Let me see if I can do that while I'm on camera. So there's one side, here's the other side, and it just comes out like so. Now, let me zoom back out. So here's the upper part of the retainer. This part is aluminum. That's gonna go in my parts bin. And then the lower part is down in here. That's gotta come out after the injector comes out. Now, how I'm gonna get this injector out is I'm gonna pry this piece of stainless steel down like this air. And this is not recommended because if you bend it back and forth too many times, it's probably going to end up breaking. But this is the process. So that piece of stainless steel gets pried down. Same thing on the other side. And then let me show you what I have here is this piece of plate metal. It's just a piece of metal that I bent at a right angle, and then I cut out a wedge in here that fits right into the injector on this lip that goes around it. So once you get that around there, it's kind of, this is a snug fit. But once you get it around there and on the injector really good, then I have a piece of leather, and you can use anything else that you want, but I'm gonna put this piece of leather on this face of the intake so it doesn't, this metal doesn't mar it, and then I'm just gonna push this back and it's gonna pry it up and take it out. So hold on, let me put this piece of leather in here. Okay, so now you see I have my pry bar, mini pry bar, and then a piece of leather here is under where I'm gonna use for leverage so that I don't mar up the thing, and then I just push back on this, and that's it. Easy peasy. Injector out. That's all there is to it. And so now I'm going to clean up this injector, and I got to clean that orifice down here where it goes. Here, let me show you. And this is where the piece of stainless steel that's part of the retainer that goes down inside there. So this whole thing has to get cleaned up really good and proper because it's filthy. And I'm thinking I'm going to end up replacing this injector because I'm getting a mixture problem on cylinder number 6. So anyway, that's how you remove the injector on the V6 3.2 and the 3.6 supercharged. It's a little more involved taking out the supercharger, but the injector part is identical. When reinstalling the injectors, if you didn't get new retaining clips, like I didn't, you want to straighten these out. Remember, these areas were bent flat down so I could get my injector puller in there. You want to straighten these back up first before you reinsert them in the intake, just because if by some freak accident you go to straighten it up while it's in the intake and it snaps off and falls down inside the engine, it'll ruin your day. So you straighten these tangs straight up, and then these little areas, that little indent in that one, you bend it so it's facing slightly inward, so it's gonna grab on to the upper retaining clip, the aluminum piece, when you put it in. So this is going to go in first, the injector is going to go on top of it, and then the aluminum piece is going to go down, and then these areas, and it's not a super tight snug fit, they just kind of hold it from falling out. I'm not sure what the whole purpose of that setup is, because the injector rail is basically what holds the injector in place, but all this stuff is there, I'm sure for good reason. So you make sure that you do that in the order that they came out, and make sure that if you're going to straighten these up, straighten them up away from the intake manifold so it doesn't fall down inside the engine and cause problems. I have the injectors reinstalled, and I'm about to put the lower intake on. Real quick tech tip before you install the lower intake: you see these tabs right here, especially on the first one and the last one. So this little tab and then this little tab, you make sure that's pushed in all the way against this one, because if it's sticking out just a little bit, that what can happen is when you're putting the lower intake in, it'll snatch that piece and bend it down, and then it'll end up under that lower intake gasket. It'll end up pinched under there, so you want to push that in, make sure that the lower intake is going to clear that when you're putting it down on the head of the car. So make sure you push those in, and then when you put the intake in, it should just slide into place. Okay, so this is the tool that I made to pull the injectors, and it's just a flat piece of metal that I had laying around. It's spare metal. It is 1.25 inches. Yeah, it's 1.25 inches in width, and the length of this, it's 10 plus 2, so it's 1 foot long. I'm sure I've cut it over time. I used it for other stuff. It was just laying around. And the thickness of it is 1/8 of an inch. Now, the most important part is this piece right here, where you see that, where it fits into the injector. So let me show you exactly. I think that's like 14 millimeters or something like that. So it's 14.8 millimeters from one end to the other. That's the width of this. And then once I got the width just right, I'll show you in a second how it fits into the injectors. But once I got that, I took my angle grinder with a sanding disc and I kind of smoothed this edge off really good, and then kind of tapered the edge here so it'll fit under the neck of the injector. And so it'll give me leverage, and it just goes into the injector like this, and then you just pry it like that, and it gives you really good leverage and just pops that injector right out of the socket. Let me get an injector. I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, so here's the injector, and you can see, this section here where it gets narrow. That's where this fits in. So the injector slides right in there like so. So it's sitting down inside the cylinder head, and then this goes in here, and then I put a piece of leather on the part where I'm using for leverage and just kind of pry it like this, and it just pops the injector right out. Once it unseats the injector, you can just grab it and pull it out by hand, but that's way easier than using a slide hammer and just kind of jamming away at it hoping that you don't snap the injector, because with this you can kind of leverage and wiggle it and finesse it out without snapping the top shoulder part of the injector off. It's a little more delicate and refined method, I found. The only downside is that you have to pry away the airs of the retainer to get this in place, but I think you would have to do that with the other one that has a slide hammer anyway, so you're not gaining anything by that. All right, so that's about that.